And welcome to the Gay Liberation Network here on Chicago Access Network Television. Unfortunately, our scheduled guest could not be here tonight, and so instead, Brent Holman-Gomez, also of the Gay Liberation Network, is going to be discussing a few things with us in terms of the whole issue of poverty, but drilling down on the issue of affordable housing, TIFF funds, and making this a livable city, not just for the 1%, not just for the conventioneers, not just for the people who live on Lakeshore Drive, but the rest of us. And so we're going to be discussing the whole issue of poverty as it relates to all of that. And but first, I'd like to share with our audience a few announcements. First of all, if you want to get in touch with the Gay Liberation Network, you should really check out our website, www.gayliberation.net. And coming up in later this month, there is going to be the trial, the sentencing, I should say, of the so-called NATO 3 young men who I would argue were framed so that the state's attorney's office and the Chicago Police Department could justify the ridiculous security spending around the NATO conference here in Chicago back in May 2012. Its sentencing date is set for Friday, April 25th at the 26th and California Courthouse. More information about specific time and the courtroom closer to the date. And coming up, there is the annual May Day March for both immigrant as well as refugee rights and workers' rights. And that is going to be, of course, on Thursday, May 1st. But in contrast to previous years, it's not going to be starting at the Union Park. Instead, it's going to be starting at the Haymarket Martyrs Monument, located at the corner of Randolph and Des Plaines, with a march to the ICE headquarters. And this is something that the Gay Liberation Network has been getting involved with over the years, and we're very enthusiastic supporters of the march this year. Again, it's going to be starting 3 p.m. at Randolph and Des Plaines. So, getting back to our topic, we're talking about TIFF funds, we're talking about poverty in Chicago. What are your general thoughts on that issue, Brent?
Well, we are particularly seeing in GLN, we've been involved in some actions in Uptown relating to the city funding very upscale real estate developments in our city that are intended to attract, the wealthiest of the wealthy, the 1%. And we as citizens of the city think that this is an improper use of public funds, that we don't need to be publicly paying for the nicest of the nice apartments. We if we are going to be as a people supporting the development of units, it needs to be development of housing that is intended for the vast majority of people to be able to access.
And we're going to do a little tour through TIFF funded development here. You'll see here coming up on your screen some information about the Hyde Park TIFF. Some $5.2 million in TIFF funding. That's your tax dollars going to the wealthy Hyatt Corporation. Controlled in part by one Penny Pritzker, one of the wealthiest people here in the city of Chicago. And they're going to be getting $5.2 million in TIF funds in order to build their fancy hotel in Hyde Park. And ironically enough, as Chicago News Tip reporter Curtis Black noted, this $5.2 million subsidy coming from the taxpayers happens at the same time as some $3.4 million was taken away from the schools in the neighborhood. And to add insult to injury, one Penny Pritzker, billionaire Penny Pritzker, is on the Chicago Board of Education and is worth some $1.8 billion herself. And yet she apparently is so impoverished that she has to get money from the city in order to build yet another one of her hotels. And to just add insult to injury, she is, of course, a major contributor to Mayor Rahm Emanuel. Moving a little bit farther north, we have the TIF funding for DePaul's new basketball arena located near McCormick Place. And this $33 million in TIF funding for the DePaul basketball arena was proposed just days before the Chicago Board of Education voted in favor of closing a record number of schools in Chicago, some 49 elementary schools it worked out to in the end.
Yeah, and you're going to talk about TIF funding, I think, a little later, but one aspect of TIF funding is that it reduces the amount of local budgets that are available specifically for education as well as streets and sand in the effort to create some additional slush funds in this TIF account. So there is a direct correlation between what we're talking about here with TIF funding and then education.
Yeah, and basically the TIF basically says that any additional property tax revenue that comes off of properties in a particular district will go to the slush fund controlled by the mayor and his appointed buddies. And in this case, they're shoveling it, of course, to the DePaul basketball arena.
Go Blue Demons!
Go Blue Demons, who, by the way, turned down a 10-year rent-free offer to play their games instead at the United Center. So instead of using a perfectly great basketball arena, after all, I think that small team of little renown, the Chicago Bulls, managed to get by with the use of it. Instead, they want to build a whole new arena down by McCormick Place. And then, of course, moving on to Uptown, which I happen to be a resident of. Here you see on your screen the proposed $14 million TIF-funded gift to an outfit known as JDL Development to develop land on one of the few large parcels left on the north side that's right by the lakefront. I mean, this is prime property, and so the whole notion that a luxury high-rise needs to be subsidized in order for anything to build on that property strikes a lot of us as absurd.
To point out an example of why this is such a luxury apartment building that is being proposed, the rent for studios in this building are projected to be $3,100 per month.
And the so-called affordable housing by the mayor's ordinance is defined as $1,200 per month for a one-bedroom apartment. I personally don't know anyone who's paying anywhere near that for their one bedrooms, but apparently that's the city's definition of low-income housing for the rest of us when it comes to whether or not they're fulfilling the ordinance, organizations such as JDL Development. It should be noted that JDL Development, its primary person who is the front man, a guy by the name of James Lettinger, has had a long history in Chicago politics, pairing with a guy by the name of Michael Marchese, who's the silent partner in this deal. Michael Marchese is a former business partner of people like Tony Rezko and William Cellini of the infamous boondoggles that we saw down in Springfield with our ex-governor Rod Blagojevich. Lettinger also partnered with a guy by the name of Fred Latsko, who one of the final acts of our dear departed Governor Blagojevich was to expunge him, his record for his felonies. So this has got a long history, this development in Uptown, and it's got a lot of residents upset. In fact, there was a referendum, a non-binding referendum in March 2012, where some 77% of Uptown voters voted yes to a call for TIFF funds to be reinvested back into the public schools and other units of government. But of course, our Alderman Kappelman is ignoring that.
Notably, Alderman Kappelman is a gay man. The LGBT community came out somewhat in support of his running for office, and the some of the people that are going to be a lot of the people that are going to be affected by this misuse of our tax dollars are LGBT.
Yes, and I do know that we're getting calls on. We'll get to your calls in just a few minutes. Just a few more facts about Uptown. This is the late lamented Borders Bookstore, which of course got $7 million in TIFF funding and then closed. You see the closed there right next door. And then the last in what may be termed the most absurd TIFF funding was the Mercantile Exchange getting $15 million to renovate the Board of Trade building right downtown at Capitalism Center, LaSalle, and Jackson. And of course, as the Tribune noted, Mayor Emanuel has been raking in the cash in terms of campaign contributions from developers, particularly the downtown ones who have made a real mess of things. And this goes to the whole situation. Who is this city for? I know you can't see very clearly on your screen here this map, but basically the gray areas are so-called median income families. And you see in 1970, basically the vast majority of the city of Chicago was median income. You fast forward to today, all those orange and red areas, those are impoverished, below medium income families, and then you see an explosion of the green, which appropriately enough is the wealthier parts of the cities, the well above median income families. The census tract information from 2012, and you can see around Uptown there certainly isn't an issue of there not being enough housing for people in that income bracket. Quite the opposite. So anyway, we're ready to take one of your calls here.
Hey Andy, how you doing, man?
Just fine. How are you tonight?
All right, this is the thing. The blue-collar workers, we the one that built this city, and we being squeezed out all different types of way. And you brought some points up about the DePaul Center and some other places. And we look at places like Soldier Field and a while back ago, the new Kennedy King campus. Know who all those places were built by? You know, redone over. It's all by Walls Construction.
I was about to say.
And my point is this, okay, that you got certain families that, I don't try to be brief, you got certain families that's controlling Chicago and is moving people outside of the city. And you having people all different sorts of ways, they taking our money. I say our money. And these aldermen, I don't call them aldermen no more. Maybe you can steal this phrase from me. I call them warlords. They don't serve us no more. They get in front of the TV and they behind the bankers that taking away our home and they raising the taxes. Look at your water bill. Okay, look at if you're a homeowner and you see your water bill has gone up maybe 3 times as much. Look at your taxes. If you miss one installment on your taxes, guess what? Your taxes are going to be 3 times as more to reclaim it. A bank got your taxes. If you don't reclaim your taxes in 2 years, guess what? You are forced to sell your home. And it's hard if you don't have homeowners insurance, guess what? You won't have a house. It's all different types of ways people are getting your house. And with your tax money, they use it against you.
Okay.
That's all. We may have some disagreement, but some things we can come together and agree on, Andy. Because the way things going right now, if you don't have a good source of income, you will not be able to live in the city. Just a while back ago, if you're on disability like me, they talking about the state is talking about taxing your income. Take care.
Okay, thank you, caller. So your thoughts, Brent?
Well, I think that picture you had up, it really is very poignant about the topic here. And
that was income, just as our caller was talking about.
The last few administrations, not just Emanuel, but also Daley, did a lot to make Chicago a city that is, being targeted towards the wealthy, and not supporting our unions, not supporting people that are making, the middle wage, and that's the reason why we've seen, unions have been out at the Hyde Park Hyatt development, protesting. The teachers union had a big event there last year. I know when the development started. That at the same time that they're tearing apart the pensions and the union organizing structures that are in place in our society, they are then taking our money and giving it to these folks to build these grandiose projects.
Well, and talking about poverty is all the rage now with the President's State of the Union recently, but actually the poverty rates, the homelessness rates and so forth have all worsened under the current administration, as they worsened under the administration before that. So talk is cheap, and if the policies that are actually being implemented, if, for example, there was lots of talk about, we've got to help people stay in their homes and so forth, but almost nothing in terms of real programs with any kind of depth were coming out of the federal government in all this. And the result is today there's new statistics out that half of all renters nationwide pay more than 30% of their income to rent. And that is the definition of poverty. And that is a huge increase over just the past few decades. The head of HUD recently said, quote, "We are in the midst of the worst rental affordability crisis that this country has known." The worst rental affordability crisis that the nation has ever known. And President Obama lauded Chicago as an example of not being Detroit during the State of the Union, and yet Chicago reported 11.4% increase in the number of homeless families since last year. This was actually a December 2013 article. I'm getting this out. So 2012 was much worse than 2011. You had emergency food assistance up 6% over the previous year. You've got basically a hollowing out of middle income people right around the city, and it's also connected to the racism, the segregation in our city. The developers have been very assiduous about pushing people away, particularly black and working class families, away from the downtown areas. The destruction of Cabrini Green, and our newspapers such as the Chicago Tribune were very much involved in the demonization of people in Cabrini Green, rather than pointing to the fact that, of course, the Chicago Housing Authority never did anything to maintain the place And
Right.
so you have a self-fulfilling prophecy that the housing's run down, it thus attracts crime, and therefore you've got an excuse to get rid of people. And what we're seeing, I would argue, is very similar to what has been seen in places like Paris, France, where poor people, the minorities, are being suburbanized, pushing them away from the downtown. Therefore, you don't have to deal with them.
Yeah.
So
and the federal government has also supported that by when with the mortgage crisis, where they invested the funds to subsidize and keep the economy running was at the banks, not at the actual families that are dealing with foreclosure. And that's just another aspect of how our government is centralizing where money is going as opposed to distributing it back out to the general populace and the general taxpayers.
Oh, and now they want to get rid of Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, by the way, which is the lenders of last resort for working class folks. We got a number of callers. We're going to try and squeeze as many in before the end of the show. So let's go to one of our callers here.
Hello.
Hello, you're on CAN TV. Must have lost that first one. Let's try another one here. Hello, you're on CAN TV. What's your question or comment, please?
Andy, you brought it up. We have people that looking at people like, how you put it, like the Indian did the buffalo, how they making money off of people's misery, how they feeding their own stomach, how they using the skin to put the clothes on their back, and the skin, how the Indian used the skin from the buffalo for their TPs, whatever. And in so many different ways, I'm going to be real quick. Look at our school system, all right? You got schools in the neighborhood that is such problems, but people are making money. There's more money in a bad school than in a good school like Whitney Young, because you got people, you got some of these students, they got to have what we call a case manager, a case worker, they got to have a counselor, then they got they got to have a special educational teacher. It's so much money in that right now, and like you were talking about, you got people on the board that's millionaires, and I'll be real quick. If you look at some of these schools, you look at a regular public school, you got people making 6 figures. Charter schools, check the record. You got people making 7 figures. Off our money, whatever. 7 figures, which is damn ridiculous.
Your comment, Brent.
They're making 7 figures
from
our public school system, and then they are getting subsidized housing as to boot.
Yeah, and there's a number. There's a number of these private charter school operators who are making more money than the president of the Chicago Board of Education, and they're overseeing 5 or 6 or 7 schools. We're going to try and squeeze in one.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hello, sir.
Good evening. You guys are covering a lot of ground tonight, but I want to touch on the issue of rent. As somebody who had rented for many, many years before I bought, it's sad, and I agree. You mentioned that figure, $900 for a one-bedroom. I don't.
$1,200 low income.
Right. I know, depending on what areas. There's an old saying that you can't fight City Hall, and it's sad to say in this day and age of where wealth controls anything, there's some truth in that. So I always look for practical solutions. If you can find someone that you can live under the same roof with, you rent an apartment, whether 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, or rent a house and have multiple people contributing to that rent, at least, you're not going to go broke. And again,
you may drive each other crazy.
Exactly. You can't.
Caller?
I spent so much money renting because I didn't want to. When I had a brief roommate, a friend for a roommate years ago that drove me mad. So,
caller, I'm really sorry, but we're going to have to cut you short because we're running out of time here. And
look
we're
for
going to use
I just don't think you
our
can fight City Hall anymore.
Hosts if we go over time here. So the issue of solutions is something that we need to spend probably a whole show on. But with that, I want to thank Brent Holman-Gomez for joining us tonight on the show, pinch hitting as it were. And then we're going to close out the show with a few quick announcements here. First, the NATO 3 sentencing date, Friday, April 25th. Make your way to 26th and Cal that day. We'll figure out the time in a specific courtroom real soon. Then March on May Day. Again, it's a new location and new time, 3 p.m. at the Haymarket Memorial at Randolph and Des Plaines Streets. And then, of course, our next GLN meeting. Get involved. First Wednesday of each month, May 7th, at the Burger Park Cultural Center. And then also check out our next show, which is always the second Friday of each month. And then finally, a quick shout out to those who helped us tonight.